The autumn rain drummed softly against the windows of Miller's diner as Robert Williams finished wiping down the last table of his evening shift. At 38, he had the steady movements of a man who had learned to make the most of every quiet moment. His 7-year-old daughter Grace sat at the counter doing homework, her pencil scratching thoughtfully across math problems. "Almost done, sweetheart?" Robert asked, hanging up his apron. "Just 2 more, Daddy?" Grace replied, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. Through the rain-streaked window, Robert noticed a figure huddled under the bus stop shelter across the street. A woman in military fatigue sat in a wheelchair, a small child pressed close to her side. They had been there for over an hour, and the last bus had already come and gone. Robert's heart stirred with familiar concern. Since his wife Sarah's passing 3 years ago, he had developed an instinct for recognizing others who were struggling to find their way. "Grace, honey, pack up your books. We need to help someone." The woman looked up as Robert approached. Her guard immediately raised. She had the alert eyes of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. The little boy beside her, perhaps 5 years old, watched Robert with curious but cautious eyes. "Ma'am, I'm Robert Williams. I work at the diner across the street. This rain isn't letting up and the buses have stopped running for the night. Would you and your son like to come inside where it's warm?" Lieutenant Colonel Elena Martinez had been trained to assess threats quickly, but something in this stranger's voice reminded her of her grandfather's gentle wisdom. Still, years of military discipline made her hesitant. "That's very kind, but we're fine," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Her son Danny shivered and looked up at her with trusting eyes. "Mama, I'm cold." Robert knelt down to Danny's level, careful not to make any sudden movements. "Hi there, buddy. I have a little girl about your age inside. She's working on math homework, and I bet she could use some help. Are you good at numbers?" Danny nodded eagerly, and Elena felt her resolve softening. The past 6 months since her medical discharge had been a series of closed doors and disappointed faces. But this man's kindness seemed genuine, untainted by pity or judgment. "Just until the rain stops," she said quietly. The warmth of the diner enveloped them like a gentle embrace. Grace looked up from her homework and smiled at Danny, immediately scooting over to make room at the counter. "I'm Grace. Want to see my math problems? They're really hard." As the children chatted, Robert poured coffee for Elena and hot chocolate for the kids. The simple act of hospitality created a bubble of peace in what had been a difficult day. "I'm Elena Martinez," she said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "This is my son, Danny. We're between places right now." Robert nodded without pressing for details. He recognized the weight of someone carrying more than they could easily share. "Well, you're welcome to stay as long as you need. The rain's supposed to continue through the night." What started as shelter from a storm became something neither Robert nor Elena had expected over the following days. Elena and Danny found themselves returning to the diner. Robert never asked about their circumstances, but his quiet presence offered something Elena hadn't felt since before her deployment, a sense of belonging. Elena had served 2 tours overseas as a logistics officer before an IED explosion changed everything. The injury to her spine had ended her military career and left her wheelchair-bound. The transition to civilian life had been harder than any battle she had faced. "You know," Robert said one evening as they watched their children play together in the diner's back booth, "I have a small apartment above the diner. The previous tenant moved out last month, and I haven't had time to advertise it. If you're looking for a place..." Elena's pride bristled. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Robert replied gently. "Danny's been helping Grace with her math, and she's been teaching him to read better. They're good for each other, and honestly, having someone upstairs would make me feel better about Grace's safety." The arrangement began tentatively. Elena insisted on paying rent from her modest disability benefits, and she helped with bookkeeping for the diner. Her military precision and organizational skills transformed Robert's chaotic filing system into a model of efficiency. Danny flourished in the stable environment. He and Grace became inseparable, and Elena watched with wonder as her often anxious son began to laugh and play like the child he should have been all along. "Mama," Danny said one evening, "are we going to stay here forever?" Elena looked around the small apartment that had become more of a home than anywhere she had lived in years. "Would you like that, mijo?" Yes, Mr. Robert is nice, and Grace is my best friend, and you smile more here. 3 months into their new life, a well-dressed man in an expensive suit appeared at the diner. He carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to having doors open for him. I'm looking for Elena Martinez, he announced to Robert. I'm Richard Peaton, an attorney representing the Wellington estate. Elena emerged from the kitchen, her expression guarded. I'm Elena Martinez. Ms. Martinez, I've been searching for you for quite some time. You are the sole surviving heir to the Wellington fortune. Your grandfather, Charles Wellington, passed away 6 months ago and left you everything. The silence in the diner was profound. Robert felt the world shift slightly off its axis. That's impossible, Elena said slowly. My grandfather died when I was 12. No, ma'am. Charles Wellington was very much alive until recently. He spent the last 26 years searching for you after your mother took you away. He never stopped hoping to find you. The lawyer placed a thick folder on the counter. The estate is worth approximately $12.7 million. Properties, investments, and a trust fund that's been growing for decades. Elena stared at the folder as if it might bite her. I don't understand. My mother said he had died. She said we had no family left. Your grandfather had a falling out with your mother over her choice of husband. She left and changed both your names. He's been looking for Elena Peaton ever since. Peaton. Elena had been Elena Peaton before her mother remarried. In the days that followed, the truth unfolded like a map to a territory Elena had never imagined. Her grandfather had been a successful businessman who had never stopped loving the granddaughter he had lost. His will included letters he had written to her over the years, filled with stories of his life and dreams for their reunion. So, what happens now? Robert asked one evening as they sat on the small balcony above the diner, watching the sunset paint the sky in gentle pastels. Elena was quiet for a long moment. The lawyer had presented her with options: mansions, penthouses, a lifestyle beyond anything she had ever imagined. Danny asked me the same question, she said finally. Do you know what I told him? Robert waited, his heart heavy with the certainty that their quiet life was about to end. I told him that money doesn't make a home. People do. Elena reached for Robert's hand. I told him that we already found our fortune. Elena, you don't have to. Robert, do you remember what you told me that first night? That Grace needed someone upstairs for safety? She smiled. Well, I've been thinking that what I really need is someone downstairs, someone who makes coffee taste like hope and who sees people as they are, not as what they have or don't have. 6 months later, the Wellington estate purchased Miller's Diner in the building that housed it. But Elena Martinez Williams kept the same warm atmosphere, the same reasonable prices, and the same open door for anyone needing shelter from life's storms. The only real change was the small plaque by the entrance that read, "In memory of Charles Wellington, who never stopped believing in the power of family." As Elena often told people, her grandfather's greatest gift wasn't the money he left behind. It was teaching her that love doesn't diminish when it's given away. It multiplies, creating ripples of kindness that touch lives in ways we may never fully understand. And sometimes, when the autumn rain drums against the windows, Elena and Robert sit together watching their children play, marveling at how life's most precious treasures often come disguised as ordinary moments of human connection.